Yeah, how about that? So this is not a mistake, all that freaked out my IT people this morning. There's no reason for you to look at anything today but me. That's the second time I've said that. All right, so I want to start with a question, and the question is, how many of you can honestly say that your life is better since you've been coming to this center? The thing about everybody raising your hand is I can't see who didn't, which is really a good thing. But I have a theory on why anyone wouldn't raise their hand with that. Because the thing that we do here, the whole intention of this, there's a lot of secondary things that go on here that are wonderful and important, like creating loving relationships with people that come here, with having social events, with having wonderful meals, with all these things that we do. But the purpose for this center is specific. And that's that we teach you the principles of science of mind so that you can have a better life. So when you raise your hand and say, I have a better life for coming here, what you're doing is acknowledging and affirming what Barbara and I have created in our lives, what our intention has been for all these years. So thank you. Thank you for acknowledging us. Whew. You have no idea how important that is to me. It's why I'm here. It's why I come here, and you're my central focus. And yes, I have all kinds of plans to be out in the world teaching other people, sharing the truth that I know with other people. But you're my foundation. So I bring the most important things that I have to say always to you. That's my intention. And I want to bring one of those today. But I want to bring a topic that maybe isn't so easy. It's important. It's vitally important. It's something that our leadership is deeply committed to. But as a community, we just don't talk about it that much. And this thing that I want to talk to you about and share with you is a spiritual practice. And the practice, if you're getting that I'm kind of trying to be courageous here to begin this conversation, is tithing. Oh, tithing. Tithing is not a spiritual principle. It's a spiritual practice. And I want to begin by explaining the difference there. The reason that it's a practice is you have to do it for it to work. Principle is simply principle, meaning that whatever you do is impacted by that principle. But applying the value of the principle to your life requires a practice, something that moves you from using the law unconsciously to using it very consciously. And how that applies here is that there is a principle behind tithing. And that principle is that you are here. Let me make sure I get this right, because I've got it in my notes, which I'm working without today as best I can. The principle behind it is that everything that we do, everything that we say, and everything that we think creates the experience of our lives. I said that inside out. Let me say it one more time. Everything that we think, everything that we say, and everything that we do creates the experience of our life. Well, how can that be? Because thinking, saying, and doing are more like expressions. But that's how the universe is organized. We teach oneness here. You've probably seen the word oneness a dozen times in the lyrics and the prayers and the affirmations that we've already done this morning. That oneness means that the creative force of the universe dwells at the point of view. It's the same thing. There's no difference. So when you have thoughts, have words that come out of your mouth, and you have actions that you take beyond your words, you're doing the same thing that the divine is doing to create the cosmos. There's no difference. Scale, perhaps. But that's the only difference. You're creating your life through those expressions. And that's the law of spirit. That's because we impress our thoughts and our words and our actions upon the law of spirit. It's like, remember when you were kids and they said God's watching you? The God that's watching you is spiritual law. It's listening to everything that you say. It knows your thoughts. And it watches what you do, not from another place, but at the point of view. So it already knows. And that's what it takes to create your life. Isn't that brilliant? Isn't that amazing that that's how life is created, based on what we do, what we believe, what we think? That's incredible. And people that know that can put that into their lives to work. And tithing is a perfect example of how to put that principle into action in your life by practicing the activity of tithing. That's the work. That's the work. So what is this thing called tithing? How does it work? Many of you know. Doesn't mean that you practice it. But I want to be very clear here that I know some people in this room do practice tithing and have had extraordinary results from that. Yet the experts call that anecdotal evidence, therefore not usable. That's all I got is anecdotal evidence. That's the truth of it, is that when you see so many people having a response to a spiritual practice, you start to believe that maybe there's something there, and maybe it really applies to everybody. It's just not everybody's applying it. And this is our chance to turn that around. So, how do we do that? Well, we have to look at this idea of tithing. Not everybody tithes. Not everybody will ever tithe. That doesn't mean that there aren't people with lots of money that never tithed. It's true. There's lots of people with money that don't believe in tithing, don't do that. And they have more money than they could ever spend for the rest of their lives. And you know what? Those people still have more money coming in. It doesn't end. When people have money, they tend to get more money. They get it because their investments have a return. They get it because they have something in their life that they're good enough at, or a product that they've created that's meaningful enough that people want more of it, therefore they get more money. Now, wouldn't that be great if all of us could just do that? Trust me, if we were going to do it that way, we'd have already found that special thing that we have in life, like a very rich relative that has left us a pile of money, or some other way to do it. Most of us would have found that. Yet most people do not have that kind of a relationship with money, where, oh, I got plenty. Oh, there's more. That's not what most of us experience. Most of us are going, I could use some more money. My checkbook's a little light. And my bills are a little big, and I'd like that to turn around. Well, there's this thing about life. Wanting something to be so does not make it so ever. Wanting is a lovely way to recognize what you want, but it doesn't give you anything. In fact, it holds you in the want. So you have to move beyond wanting in life. You've got to do those three things that I said. You've got to think, you've got to say, and you've got to act on your life to make it work. And it's got to be things that clearly demonstrate a convincing movement of your life. And who do you have to convince? Yourself. Yourself is the one that must be convinced. So when you look at the checkbook and you don't like the balance, or when you look at the bills and go, oh, that went up, and those kind of things, you're adding to this thing you say you don't want in your life, which is less than a positive, abundant flow in your life. Something else is happening. So anytime that you have those circumstances where you think you don't have enough, you're telling that law that I talked about that you don't have enough. And the law is just fine accommodating you and having you not have enough. That's how it works. It's not all that pretty. It's not that necessarily fun to talk about. But you got to do something that works. And I just don't know anything better than tithing to turn this around. And I don't have to look very far in this room to see people who have done this in their lives and made it work because they committed to this action. But it's not just an action. So let me tell you how I define tithing. Tithing to me is joyfully and gratefully sending 10% of the money that comes to you out specifically to acknowledge your spiritual good. That is to me what tithing is. Now, why is it 10%? I have no idea. It's just where it came. It's just the way it is. But what I've noticed about this idea of 10% is that it's usually not enough to ruin your life. And it is enough to get your attention. So when you do that, you got to do it consciously. You can't do it by the way. So I want to go back to where we started here. We started with this idea that a principle is the principle we're looking at here. The law is based in what we think, what we say, and what we do. So what do we think with tithing? How does that work there? Well, I'm describing how it works there. You consciously take 10% of your money and you send it to the people or organizations that you're receiving spiritual value from. Now, you've got all these other things that you pay all the time. You pay for the space you live in, you pay for the car you drive, you pay for the food you eat, you pay for the clothes you wear. That's all part of your human experience with money. That keeps your body safe. It gives you a safe place to be and a way to get places and a way to be acceptable in the society and all these things. They all have to do with the physicality of life. What are you investing in the spirituality of your life? In that part of you that knows that you really are more than it appears. That you're more than the body, you're more than your emotions, you're more than your bank account, that you're something greater than that. How do you do that? By acknowledging those around you that tell you that that's so. By saying, boy, when I hear that, I remember who I am. I live my life differently. When you do that, you're acknowledging that something is going on to make you clearer about who you are as you move through life on planet Earth. I believe that you're an eternal being. I am as well. I believe that my life transcends this body that I carry. But for right now, that's the one I got, to be in physical form. And I'm really happy about that. And I want to take care of it. But I want to take care of my spiritual nature as well. I want to know that what is important to me is showing up in my life. And I'm not talking about physical things. I'm talking about a sense of who I am. I'm talking about my relationships with other people. I'm talking about the idea that I'm secure in this experience called life. So I tithe. I've been tithing since I was, maybe 8. I grew up in a church where tithing was just the way everybody did it. And I was taught, some of you will remember this. My mother would give me a coin as I would go into Sunday school to put in the basket when I was really little. But they would, even with the little kids, they would pass the basket. And we put our coin in there. And then it came to a time where I actually had some money. I was, in the summers, I would wash cars and mow lawns and have money. And I expected of myself that I would tithe. But then when I left the church of my youth, I stopped. I had other interests. I wasn't going to church. That wasn't calling to me. So I moved from South Florida to Texas and worked in the oil field industry for about 5 years. And then I started my own company, Waterhouse Engine and Pump Company. And we built fluid handling systems for oil rigs, for oil or oil processing systems of all kinds. And it was a very lucrative business. And when I was still in my 20s, I was doing over $4 million in sales a year with this little company that I started. I had so much money in my life, and I couldn't hang on to it to save anything. I had nothing. I lived in a nice big house, and I wrote a multi-$1,000 check every month to be in that house. Sometimes I would forget to pay the light bill, and they would come out and put a notice on there, if you don't pay this tomorrow, we're going to turn your lights off. It's like I just didn't have a sense of how to relate to it. So it just, like sand through your fingers, it went away. It never stuck, never worked. After I left all of that in Texas and ran away to Australia, I still wasn't looking at this idea of tithing. And at this point, I didn't have much, which was easier not to have much, not to expect much, to have enough to make sure you got your meals and you pay your rent, and that's fine. You get in Sydney, some people have cars, but they drive on the wrong side of the road. It gets really complicated. So taking the train was much easier, and that was my life, and I was okay with that, no big deal. I was learning, I was growing, and then I came back to Miami, to my hometown. And as many of you have heard, it took me about 3 days to find Barbara, and this thing called Science of Mind, which I was very curious about. And one of the things that I learned from Barbara, specifically Barbara, was the importance of tithing. And I go, I remember that. I did that. And so I started tithing. And pretty quickly, everything changed. And I had good work. I was a manager for a company. Then I was the administrator of the Miami church. And I had plenty of money for what I wanted to do. I drove a nice car. Everything was really kind of working. Life was lovely. And then we moved here. And I remember after we'd been here a few years, we had been going to a different spiritual community. And at a point, Barbara shared that she had this drawer, and in her sock drawer, actually. And it's where she would put the cash that was her tithe. But she didn't know at that moment where she was being spiritually fed, so the cash was building up. This was a problem. In one sense, it was a blessing in another sense, because it caused us to wake up to the fact that we needed to start this. That made all the difference. But I want you to know, since I started tithing, before Barbara and I were married, and since Barbara and I were married, there haven't been a lot of money worries. And I'm even talking back to 2007, 2008, when everybody had money worries. Sure, we were concerned, but we never needed for anything, wanted for anything. We had everything that we needed. Because it was our discipline to demonstrate. And let me tell you how I do this with the check. And this is certainly a thinking thing as well. When I write out my tithe check, I bless it. That thing we do up here on Sunday morning where I ask you to hold your whatever you're giving close to your heart, I do that. And it reminds me of how much I have to be grateful for in my life. I have so much to be grateful for. And I do this so joyously. And whether it matters or not, where I tithe is here, because this is where I'm spiritually fed. It doesn't matter whether I'm standing here or sitting down there listening to Barbara or the music or anything else that we do at this center. It doesn't matter whether I'm out there working in the front grounds with beautiful people that will give us Saturday to do that crazy thing. It doesn't matter. I'm spiritually fed, always. And I always have more than enough. So I remember that with that check. And then it goes where it goes. And that's important for me, because I have to think that this is working. If I think that this is working, if I believe that this is working, if I know that this is working, to give away 10% of what comes to me, regardless of where it comes from, to this center, it's got to be working, or it's a waste of my time. And guess what? It works. The next thing I talked about in the principle of law is that it's what we think, it's what we say. And that's what happens when I do that with that check. I'm saying out loud. I'm an extrovert. Everything's out here. Sometimes I hear it for the first time when I say it. But when I say I'm grateful with that check in my hand, I make it real. I teach in doing spiritual mind treatment that the whole idea of gratitude is not a nicety. It's an essential. It's essential that we are grateful for the things in our life if we want more of them. Because gratitude is focusing in a meaningful way on what's happening in your life. When you're grateful, you're actually going to get more of that, because that's how the law works. That's the principle that works, is that when I think it and I say it and I share that gratitude, I'm going to get more of it. But I'm not done. I can't stop there. It's lovely to think that maybe you could stop there by being joyous and grateful, but you can't. You still got to take the action. You got to take the action to get fully engaged in the idea of this dynamic flow of spirit. So, how do you take the action? That's the check. That's moving money from your account into another's account or hand so that they can recognize that they have been of value in your life. Whether, again, if it's the center, an individual, another organization, wherever it is, there's nothing in the principle and there's nothing in the practice of tithing that says where you have to do it other than you're spiritually fed by doing it. That's the point. And then what happens? You share 10% of your income. At first, it's the scariest thing in the world if you've never done it before. I never had to go through the scary part because I did it when I was a kid. And I knew that it worked. It worked back then. It works now. But most people think, I'm not making it on the money I get after taxes anyway. And you got to know that the government's going to get its share. So that's already out. Now we're talking a net amount. How am I going to do everything with this? By changing your thinking, what you say, and what you do. That totally defies those limiting thoughts. that totally takes you to another level of consciousness, to know who you are. Everything in your life shows up because of what you think, what you say, and what you do. Everything. And if you want more in your life, if you want a greater flow in your life, this is the way. I don't know another way. All of us, I'm sure, that's not true, that everybody in the room, because I know there are people in the room that were those people that don't need more money. But most of us are still looking to have a greater flow in our lives. If you want that, if that's important to you, if there's something missing there, I'm encouraging you today to take a chance and to do this. All three parts. All three parts. That you are aware of what you're doing and you do it joyously. That you're grateful for what you already have and what's coming to you. And that you take the action, because the action makes it all very real. And when you do, what I have seen happen again and again and again is a total shift in a life experience. It does it for me. It does it for this center. This center has tithed since day one. Every time you give money to this center, 10% of that goes somewhere else to say thank you for feeding us. Some of it goes to Centers for Spiritual Living, which is headquartered in Golden, Colorado, where I served for 6 years as president. Some of it goes to other places, like the Spanish-speaking ministries in Mexico, because we have this wonderful desire to expand our audience to Spanish-speaking people. And they are the key to that, and they are supporting us. Books that are already on our website, people that are part of that conference in Mexico are already doing classes on using the book on our website. We are thrilled, because that takes us right back to that place of why are we here? We're here to spread this message to the world, and they're helping us. So we tithe to them. And they say thank you, and we say thank you, and everybody's better off because of that. This center has always tithed and always will, and I believe that our success for this beautiful facility we have and finding you is part, at least, because of that discipline. Not everybody in this movement believes this. I remember heated discussions at several conferences where some people just don't want to look at it that way. But we do, and we prosper because of it. So it's something that all of our leaders do. All of our practitioners are committed to tithing. All of our board members are committed to tithing. Our leadership council members, we're still working with them. Anybody can do this. Everybody can do this. And I want to tell you that I'm rooting for you. I'm your biggest fan. Your success is my success. So I give this to you. Not to say that you have to do it here, you don't. I have heard people say that the only reason we talk about this ever at this center is because we want your money. That is a bald-faced lie. We want to be successful as a spiritual community, yes. But we're not trying to talk you into your money. We're trying to talk you into prosperity and success in your lives. That's what this is about. So I leave that with you. You do with it what you want. I'm feeling really good about it. And I love you very much. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barbara Waterhouse.
And I'm John Waterhouse. Thank you for watching this message today.
Through our website, cslasheville.org, we have over 1,000 messages, classes, and New Thought books, all to download at no charge to anyone.
Producing this incredibly valuable collection of ideas is really making a difference in the world. It's changing lives everywhere.
Please go to our website, cslasheville.org, and click the Donate button. You can support this life-changing ministry, and when you do, we'll send you a note of thanks and also put you on our daily prayers.
By doing this, you're helping to raise the consciousness of people across the entire globe. We're changing lives together, those lives that are being more prosperous, more healthy, and more joyous. Thank you for being a part of this important work and supporting what we do here at CSL Asheville.
Thank you.